Good morning, my dear friends. I must thank people from Mapicon for inviting me to deliver this lecture. I must also congratulate Dr. Vitul Gupta for taking extreme pains in conducting this conference in record time in a smooth and fantastic way. Shows his commitments towards medical knowledge sharing. Congratulations to the entire Malwa team. Well, what has been assigned to me is early combination therapy in type 2 diabetes. And let me take you through the journey of this topic. These are my credentials, and I bring greetings from Muzaffarpur from the president of API, Dr. Kamlesh Tiwari, and Dr. Professor B.B. Thakur, the past president of API and past dean of ICP. To start this journey, let me just give you some small introduction about the topic. Chronic progressive disease is what is diabetes, and it is associated with the multiple complications that only reduces the life expectancy but also destroys the quality of life. Unfortunately, there's a tsunami of diabetes, especially in poor countries. In India, nearly 1 million Indians die every year due to diabetes and related complications. And hence, diabetes has emerged as a major cause of not only mortality, but also of complications like blindness, stroke, heart attacks, kidney failures, and lower limb amputations, bringing a huge socio-economic burden to the entire country. What causes diabetes? As has been the evolution of humans over time, such has been the evolution of pathophysiology of type 2. The knowledge has expanded every day. In 1920, it was found that diabetes was caused only because of insulin deficiency, and therefore the treatment of diabetes was only insulin. But in 70s, we came to understand that it is because of not only insulin deficiency, but there is some kind of insulin secretory defects, some kind of insulin resistance. So then we had the insulin secretagogues, we had the PPAR gamma agonists. In 2010, we have known that there is not only insulin deficiency, insulin secretory defects, insulin resistance, but also alpha cell dysfunction and renal glycosuria. And therefore, we have multiple agents acting towards different pathophysiology of type 2 diabetes. And we have the famous ominous octet pathophysiology of diabetes, where multiple agents, multiple pathophysiology come into place in causing diabetes, not only from the alpha beta cells, alpha cells, but also from the incretins, from adipose tissue to kidneys to muscles to brain to liver, everywhere. Therefore, what inference can be drawn from these pathophysiological causes of diabetes is that multiple drugs are used targeting different sites of causation of diabetes. Therefore, multiple drugs can be used in combination too. Now, if we use multiple drugs that can address the multiple pathophysiological defects in diabetes, an early and intensive therapy is a must for preventing and slowing the progressive beta cell failure. And I am going to embark on this journey. So let us come on to the background. So what is the background? Asian Indians are 3 to 4-fold more insulin resistant than other ethnic groups, irrespective of the similar BMI, age, and body fat. Beta cell responsiveness in South Asians is insufficient to compensate for the degree of insulin resistance. Asian Indians lose beta cell function early in the natural history of type 2 diabetes. And what is our Indian report card? That has been miserably bad. This is a Discover a trial by Sanjay Kalra, and he witnessed almost 3,000 patients. They were studied, and the mean HbA1c at baseline was almost 8.6%. Average BMI of Indian patients was quite high, 27.3. That we have obesity and visceral adiposity as well. 32% of patients were uncontrolled with dual therapies. 45% were uncontrolled on single drug of metformin, and it took almost 4.6 years to initiate the second line treatment. We understand that Indians have diabetes at least a generation ahead as compared to the European counterparts. And early onset diabetes is a worrisome factor because it is one of the cause of an early mortality. So this was a study from it is published in Diabetologia, and what was the key question which this study answered was, are the newly diagnosed early onset diabetes, pre-diabetes, and glycemic recovery among young adults associated with incident cardiovascular disease or mortality? And the findings were that in this cohort study of almost 250,000 young adults, individuals with newly diagnosed diabetes and pre-diabetes had increased incident cardiovascular death and all-cause mortality. And individuals with early glycemic recovery from diabetes or pre-diabetes had decreased incident cardiovascular death and all-cause or cardiovascular mortality. So this can be, extrapolated to Indian population also, where Indians, as I told you, developed diabetes at least a decade earlier, and they were more at chance of cardiovascular disease and death. And if we could just stop them from control the blood sugars, we could prevent the all-cause mortality and cardiovascular death. So Indians are predisposed to early diabetes, early cardiovascular morbidity and mortality. So we need to be fast. We all understand that by the time of diagnosis of diabetes is made, beta cells, almost 80% of the beta cells have already been lost. Therefore, it is essential that we intervene aggressively with therapies known to correct the already known pathophysiological disturbances in beta cell function. And however hard we try to control blood sugars, beta cell functions progressively decline. Therefore, the aggressiveness needs to be increased, and we need to attack through different mechanism. So we need to use medicines which can attack a different pathophysiological basis of diabetes, so that we can not only prevent beta cell function, but we can also prevent the progression of diabetes and therefore the coincident morbidity and mortality. Intensive approach has already been known to have huge long-term diabetes complications. Every drop counts. So every 1% drop in HbA1c can reduce long-term complications hugely. And this has been already studied. So what are our weapons? So we have different drugs like insulin, sulfonylureas, DPP-4s, metformins, glitazones, SGLT2 inhibitors, GLP-1 receptors, and many more. And these achieve targets either alone or when used in combination. These have different advantages. They have different disadvantages also. But when we combine them, we have better things. So what are the options? They have different glycemic control, and we need to use them properly. So how do we use them? So we can use them in a stepwise combination, and we can use them as initially combining them together. What is the stepwise approach? So as we all know, the typical clinical course is from impaired glucose tolerance and insulin resistance to development of diabetes to diagnosis of diabetes, which can take another 4 years, to microvascular complications, to more advanced microvascular and cardiovascular complications, to more advanced death and death. The usual sequence is followed by the stepwise approach, where you start with diet and exercise when the diabetes is diagnosed. Then we put the patient on oral agents. Then we put the patients after 3 to 4 years to combination therapy, and finally to insulin and combination of insulin agents, different type of insulins. So this is the stepwise approach, And an example of stepwise approach is diet and exercise, then followed by an oral monotherapy to an oral combination to oral injectables, incretin mimetics to oral insulin, and then only to insulin, along with lifestyle changes. So this is the usual stepwise approach. Stepwise approach is basically a treat to fail approach because the sequence of event is slow while the duration as the duration of diabetes increases, and it is failing to achieve multiple times the glycemia. So the stepwise approach is a reflection of our inertia, of the patient's inertia, and overall the clinical inertia, leading not only to a failure of glycemic control, but also failure in the very essence of management of diabetes, that is prevention of complications and giving a fruitful, effective life. So why is it important to slog in the opening overs? So if you could remember the World Cup, which was won by Sri Lanka, you must have fond memories of how Jayasuriya and Kalu Vitarnia used to slog in the initial years, in the initial overs. And these slogging led to why the Sri Lanka could lift the World Cup. So why is it important to slog in diabetes? A slogging is important because if you control sugars in very early part of the overall journey of diabetes, you are going to give a good legacy effect, and a good legacy effect is what goes into metabolic memory, and it has been found to lead to 24% reduction in microvascular complications, 15% reduction in myocardial infarction, and 13% reduction in all-cause mortality. Now, if you fail to do that, you could have a bad legacy complication, and hence you could land up in different complications of diabetes. We all understand that beta cell preservation after 3.5 years of intensive diabetes therapy is useful. And if we start effectively in intensive insulin therapy on beta cells and glycemic control in patients with newly type 2 diabetes, you are going to have tremendous advantage. Early intensive glycemic management can reduce incidence of progression and on complications too. So there have been many studies which have tried to answer the questions of glycemic advantage, of remissions, of other complications, and other side by side advantages or side by side advantages. So this is one trial where this is called the EDICT trial, the efficacy and durability of initial combination therapy. This was compared with the induction regimen of metformin, pioglitazone, and exenatide versus standard of care in a population of in a subset of population where the HbA1c was more than 6.5. And what the results were? The results were that these individuals who were put on an induction regimen of a combination of metformin, pioglitazone, and exenatide, the long-term glycemic control was better than the standard of care, that is 5.95% versus 6.5%. The chances of hypoglycemia was again lesser as compared to the standard of care. Weight loss was significant with the induction regimen as compared to weight gain of the usual standard of care at that point of time. Now, importantly, when these patients who were on induction regimen, when they were followed for another 5 years, it showed that 3 years, sorry, it showed that there was more than 50% reduction in the carotid edema medial thickness progression as compared to the standard of care. What I was trying to impress upon by showing you the good legacy effect. So individuals who were on initial combination therapy showed better long-term advantages as shown by 50% reduction in CIMT, apart from an initial glycemic control, lower hypoglycemia rate, and weight loss as compared to weight gain in the standard of care. So this was the EDICT trial. Now, this is another trial which which used metformin, dapagliflozin, and glargine insulin in subset of population who had HbA1c of less than 7.3. These individuals stopped this regimen after 12 weeks, and these patients were followed for 24, 36, and 48 weeks just to see the remission. So individuals who were on this induction regimen had a higher rate of remission and lower relapse rate as compared to the standard of care. Therefore, initial combination therapy can also lead to type 2 diabetes remission as compared to a stepwise approach, which is a fail to treat approach. A cosmetic trial, which includes the sitagliptin, metformin, and alogliptin along with pioglitazone, the benefits were seen up to 12 to 52 weeks. Glyburide, metformin, and pioglitazone combination versus insulin and metformin combination. So both were combination therapies, and they showed advantages at 3.5 to 6 years. Verified trial, which included population of HbA1c of more than 6.5%, also showed benefits up to 5 years. So let us come on to the verified trial, which is a recently published important trial or study which showed the glycemic durability of an early combination therapy with vildagliptin and metformin versus a sequential metformin monotherapy in newly diagnosed type 2 diabetes. It was a 5-year multi-center randomized double-blind trial, and this was how this study was done. So on an initial run-in of 3 weeks, the patients were divided into two arms. Two arms. One arm received metformin along with vildagliptin of 50 milligram BD, and the other arm continued with the metformin dose. And after a period 1, these individuals who were only on metformin were then added on with vildagliptin 50 milligram, and the other combination just continued with the same medicine of metformin and vildagliptin. So what it is trying to compare is that a sequential addition of metformin to vildagliptin to metformin versus an initial combination of metformin to vildagliptin. So this trial basically compared initial combination therapy versus sequential therapy or stepwise approach. And what the results were. So the results were vildagliptin was added initially to metformin. So this was an early combination therapy shown by the blue lines. An early combination therapy strategy significantly reduced the relative risk of time to initial treatment failure by almost 49% versus initial monotherapy, which is a huge number. Median time to failure was 3 years in the initial monotherapy strategy versus 5 years of early combination therapy. So failure with therapy occurred significantly later, almost twice with combination therapy as compared with sequential therapy. The macrovascular events again were better with early combination therapy. Macrovascular events were less, and it showed better advantage as compared to initial monotherapy, 24 versus 33. Time to first adjudicated macrovascular events again were favoring the combination therapy as compared to initial monotherapy. But I must admit at this point of time that although a verified trial is a indicative signal, we need to have more dedicated studies which could answer these questions again. So let's compare the stepwise therapy versus combination therapy. The advantage of stepwise therapy is that you get a good patient adherence. The cost is favoring stepwise therapy, easier to access efficacy and side effects because you add it sequentially, and easier individualization of therapy. But the potential disadvantage is that there is a risk of prolonged hypoglycemia and subsequent complications, increased risk of clinical inertia if not implemented properly, little or no effect on the disease progression. Now compare it with a combination therapy where the use of drug combinations aimed at targeting multiple pathogenic mechanisms simultaneously and preferably by complementary mechanism of action is seen with combination therapy. You achieve an early and a greater way of glycemic goals as compared to stepwise therapy. It has the potential of delaying the disease progression and preservation of beta cell function, and it reduces the clinical inertia. There are certain limitations with combination therapy as well. So, assessment of efficacy and side effects are limited. Long-term cost effectiveness is not easily assessed, and patient adherence with complex multiple drug regimens are there. But so should we waste time? So I don't think we should waste time, because most patients who at the very outset are unable to achieve glycemic targets, and we need to understand that because this is the core nature of disease, because of its progressive nature, and possibly the current treatment paradigm also fails to address it. So a stepwise approach may lead to frequent early treatment failure and prolonged periods of elevated glycemia. Combination therapy can increase the number of patients achieving glycemic goals, and newer agents like SGLT2 inhibitors may reduce the risk of hypoglycemia and body weight gain. So this all favors early combination therapy. Even the global partnership recommends that treat patients intensively so as to achieve target HbA1c of less than 6.5% within 6 months of diagnosis. And after 3 months, if the patients are not at target, to start combination therapy. ADA and ACE also recommend HbA early combination therapy. And this is what the ACE guidelines say, that if the patient has an entry of HbA1c of more than 7.5%, you should straight away start with dual therapy or even a triple therapy. If the patient has an entry of HbA1c of less than 7.5%, you can consider monotherapy. But if these patients have, established atherosclerotic vascular disease, or are at high risk of ASCVD, are in HCKD3, or have heart failure with reduced ejection fraction, you should straight away start with, combination therapy, especially the long-acting GLP-1 receptor agonist or SGLT2 inhibitors with proven efficacy. So even in individuals with a low HbA1c of 6.5 to 7.5%, our early combination therapy is recommended in a subset of population who do not achieve glycemic control and who have evidences of atherosclerotic vascular disease or CKD or heart failure. So in those subset of populations, an early recommendation of combination therapy is recommended. And the EDICT trial, verified trial, and the MECHANS, which I already told you, has been incorporated in the ESC, and ESC says that if the patient is on metformin, and if the ASCVD risk is high or severe risks are high, you straight away add SGLT2 inhibitors with GLP-1. So early combination therapy is the need of the hour, especially in our subset of population where Indians have at least a decade earlier risk of getting diabetes. The risk of atherosclerotic vascular disease in those subset of populations is huge when they have an early diabetes. And if we fail in addressing these questions, the core issues of atherosclerotic vascular disease in our young population, we might land up in a bad legacy. We might land up in patient not preventing the atherosclerotic and other complications of type 2 diabetes. So early combination therapy should be recommended in our patient so that we achieve a good control. So you should think that it's late if you do not act now. Thank you very much.